Mr. Simpson is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Blazier, people represented by Mr. Darden and Ms. Clark. Jury is not present. The record should reflect that this morning I had a chambers conference with counsel to discuss a questionnaire that will go to the jurors this afternoon, inquiring of them if they are desirous of extending the hours of deliberation into a later session during the evening hours, and whether or not they are desirous or willing to deliberate on Saturdays, with the understanding that any deliberations must be conducted here at the courthouse and in the jury deliberation room. We also discussed, counsel had no objection to the questionnaire proposed by the court. Also, the record should reflect that the court has directed counsel to be available on a 1 hour's call for the purposes of responding to questions by the jury and also requests for readback. And the court has indicated also that a longer time period to be available for the purposes of rendering a verdict will probably be in place, but we'll discuss that when the time comes. All right, anything else we need to discuss before, put on the record before we conclude with Mr. Darden's argument? Sure. All right, Deputy Trier. Yes, Mr. Scheck, good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to register for the record certain objections. One in particular to Ms. Clark's argument, and get some determination from the court on this issue. At one point in her argument, she began making references to the defendants not performing tests on evidence, and started making comments about experts for the defense who never appeared in court or testified, and what they did or didn't do. In particular, the comment that concerned me the most was in reference to EDTA testing. It's one thing to say that Dr. Reeders didn't perform a test using the MSMS machine, because that certainly came out and was an impeachment in the testimony. But what concerned me was a reference, well, the defense had other experts and they didn't come in and give you test results or anything to that effect. And that seems to me improper because, first of all, it's commenting on a privileged area. I think that's 913. And secondly, I think we've already had some litigation on this issue where the court actually made a finding that the conduct of the prosecution in terms of trying to find out what, if anything, defense experts were doing in this area was, in the court's words, reprehensible. So it seems to me that comment on what other experts could have done with respect to their testing or did do or anything like that would be improper, although I have no objection to her making comments about Dr. Reeders. I thought that, and I'd like some kind of guidance from the court on that issue.
Ms. Clark?
I don't know what to say, Judge. I pointed out to the jury what's in the record. I pointed out the truth. And I think I was very specific about the people they called and they didn't call. What I pointed out, to the best of my recollection, is that they called Dr. Reeders to testify about someone else's tests. He performed none. He could have. I talked about Dr. Gerdes, and I talked about Dr. Lee, and I talked about Dr. Blake. This is all in the record. I don't recall. I did not refer to other experts that were unnamed or that did not come into the record. I talked about the ones that were in the record, and that's why they didn't perform any tests. So I don't know what the complaint is.
All right, Mr. Scheck, do you want to, are there any case citations? Because primarily during the course of argument, prosecution counsel are entitled to comment upon the state of the evidence and the failure to call logical and material witnesses. And that's People versus Miller, 50 Cal 3rd at 9:54. The court's comments at 9:96.
No, it sounds like from her comments, I heard something different, and if Ms. Clark doesn't believe she said that, or certainly isn't going to make that argument on a rebuttal, then I guess we don't have a quarrel.
Okay.
It seems to me, though, that just to make my point very, very clear, it's one thing to comment on Dr. Reeder's and what tests he did or did not perform under the circumstances. I distinctly heard her say the defense has other experts that could have done that test. And that, I think, is beyond the Miller case and beyond proper comment on the record, and it appears that Ms. Clark agrees.
Has to
So
be based on
perhaps
something based in the record, correct?
right. So it appears as though there's no disagreement here. But I'm very concerned because of.
Let's do this. Let's have our computer maven, Mr. Blazier, see if he can find the appropriate comment, and at the next recess, we'll take it up if you feel it's something that's appropriate.
Well,
Your Honor, I'll tell you what.
No, we just settled it.
Well, no, because in case, I don't know, we can't all remember what we say over the period of hours, but I will say this. Any reference to other experts would have been they could have brought someone in, not they had someone available. But assuming, what if that's the case? Don't do it? Wait. Okay,
Discussion's over.
all right.
All right, thank you. Deputy Trier, let's have the jurors, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. And let the record reflect that we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And Mr. Darden, are you prepared to continue on with your argument, sir?
Yes, I am, Your Honor. Thank you.
Right.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everybody,
Would you just briefly show that to counsel?
if you can, I hope everybody had a
Thank
good
you.
sleep last night. It was a long day yesterday. And I thank you. Let me thank you in advance for hearing me again this morning. I don't expect to take up the entire morning. In fact, with any luck, I won't take up more than half of it. But we'll have to see. Well, you recall where we left off yesterday. I was telling you about this defendant's relationship, this man's relationship with Nicole Brown. And I told you that it was a simmering relationship. You know, it was a slow burn. It was a slow burn. And I described for you and discussed with you some of the testimony that you heard in this case, testimony you heard from witnesses about their relationship. And we talked about the 1985 incident involving the baseball bat and the Mercedes-Benz. We talked about the 1989 incident and the fact that the police have been there 8 times before. Both the defendant here and Nicole Brown both admitted that, so I guess it's true, right? We talked about the incident at the Red Onion when the defendant grabbed Nicole by the crotch and in front of a bar full of strangers and humiliated her. We talked about that. We talked about his admission to Scheck, about his jealousy after the 1989 incident. We never talked about the testimony we heard from Denise Brown. Do you remember the testimony from Denise Brown when she talked about some of the really, really nasty things he would say to Nicole? As you may recall, Denise Brown, Nicole's sister, testified that during the time that she was pregnant, the defendant would call her names. Do you recall that testimony? He'd call her a fat pig. And he would call her a fat pig in front of other people. Now, I don't know what you should extract from that. I mean, have you ever heard of such a thing? I don't know. I would suggest, however, that that is some indication of how he really felt about her. You know, sometimes you get in a relationship, people get in a relationship, you know, and you have one half of the relationship who's dominant, and you have another half who's somewhat passive, and the dominant half dominates the other half. And what effect do you suppose this would have on Nicole? That is, being called a fat pig by her husband while she's pregnant. What effect would that have on her self-esteem? Because you're probably wondering, well, hey, if he did all of these things to her, if he said all of these things to her, why did she stay? Well, there's this old song, and the words used to go I think it was the Dramatics. I can't really recall. But there was a couple of lines in the song where they said, the strong give up and move on, and the weak give up and stay. You know, if you badger a person long enough, if you beat them down long enough, if you wear them down long enough, pretty soon you strip them of their dignity, their self-esteem, and they are weak, and they are submissive, and they can't go. They can't stay. And you know how that is. Everybody knows how that is. We've all been in bad relationships before. You have friends. You see them in these bad relationships. Why? Why do they stay? Why do they stay? Usually they feel they don't have a choice. They don't know that they have a choice. They forgot that they had a choice. In their minds, they have no choice. She's a fat pig. But we talked about that yesterday, and we talked about justice, and we talked about what the real issue in this case was about, and I pointed the defendant out to you, and I told you he killed her, and you've heard the evidence in this case. He killed Ron Goldman. O.J. Simpson's a murderer. That's what the evidence indicates. That is what the evidence indicates. That is what the evidence shows. It shows that he's not just a murderer, but he's a double murderer. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that I have to stand here and tell you this, because I'd rather be somewhere else. I'm sure you'd rather be somewhere else. Who wants to really have to confront and deal with these issues? But we have to, because we have a duty. Marcia and I have a duty, and you have a duty as well. Your duty is to look at all the evidence, to be fair, be conscientious, be objective. And your duty is to look at all the evidence, the totality of circumstances, everything. We don't want you to just look at one piece. Don't just look at the prosecution's case. Look at the entire case. Look at everything. Because when you do, hey, what can you say? Except he did it. And we've proven it. And we've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. And we talked about the safe deposit box yesterday, and we talked about the fact that Nicole knew that she was going to die, and we know that she knew that because she told the police that in 1989. And we know that she knew that because of what she saved for us, the roadmap she left for you in that safe deposit box. The letters, the photographs, the will. You recall that testimony. And as we went through the progression here, through the history of his abuse of Nicole, and by the way, not every incident here on this chart is an incident necessarily of abuse. But we wanted to lay out the history of their relationship as well. And so that's why you see things like divorce and et cetera. So we're not trying to mislead you. But we thought it was important that you know how the relationship developed over the years. And this is an unusual relationship. You have to agree. There's something wrong here. Henry Lee said there was something wrong. There's something very wrong here. This is a slow-burning, simmering relationship, and it's just like I told you yesterday, the fuse is burning. The fuse is burning, folks, and it's getting shorter, and it's getting shorter, and it's just getting shorter. But this morning, you know, I want to take things a step further, if I may, if you'll allow me to. Let's just cut right to the chase. Imagine a defendant in his Bronco. He is full of anger, and he is full of rage, and it's nighttime. And he's driving that Bronco, and he is full of jealousy. And the fuse continues to burn, and the focus of his anger is Nicole. For some reason, in his mind, she has done something that he can't ignore, something that has set him off. He's jealous, he's raging, he's out of control, and he's in that Bronco, and he is driving as fast as he can toward Nicole's house. And it's about 10 o'clock. He is out of control, folks. He is completely out of control, and when he gets to Nicole's place, he quickly parks the Bronco and he gets out. It's 10 o'clock. He's in his Bronco. He's at Nicole's house. It's nighttime. But we're not even talking about June 12. We're not talking about June 12, 1994. We're talking about October 25, 1993. All along, I've asked you to be open-minded about this man and who he is. And we have suggested to you, and I think we've proven to you, that he is not the person that you see on those TV commercials and at halftime in those football games. That is his public persona. We all have one. We all have one. We behave a certain way when we're in public, and we behave another way when we're at home. You know what they say, nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. And the fact that we may see you and you may see us doesn't really mean that you know us, or that you know me, or you know Ms. Clark, or Mr. Cochran. You see us here in public. But what are we? What are we really? What are we really inside? What are we really at home? Well, we have a very, very, very nice example. Well, nice is a bad choice of words. We have a very, very poor example of who this man is, of who he is at home, of who he is in his private life. It's the private side, the other side of him. And I want you to listen to a tape of an emergency call. And you recall that I played that tape for you a long time ago, months ago, and you probably forgot about it, up until yesterday, I hope. But I'm going to ask you to listen to that tape in just a moment. Now, you know, some people say, well, how could O.J. Simpson actually kill this woman and Ron Goldman when her kids are in the house? You know what I mean? They say, well, who would do something like that? Well, he would. Keep this in mind, if you will, if you think it's important. In 1989, when he beat her, you'll recall that when the police came and wanted to take her to Parker Center to have photographs of her injuries taken, you'll remember that she said, I don't want to go, I just want my kids, just take me back home to my kids are at home, I want to be with my kids. The night he beat her, his kids were in the house. And when you listen to this tape from October 25, 1993, after the first couple of minutes, you'll hear the defendant in the background yelling and screaming and raging. You'll hear that rage. And you'll hear Nicole on the telephone say, the kids are upstairs. The fact that the kids are in the house means nothing to this man, Mr. Fairlow, Mr. Wooden.
Which exhibit is this, Mr. Darden?
exhibit is this, Mr. Fairlow? 20?
Thank you.
911 emergency. Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please. Well, okay, what does he look like? He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just send somebody over here? Okay, what is he doing there? He just drove up here. Somebody over? Wait a minute, what kind of car is he in? He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in. Okay, wait a minute, what's your name? Nicole Simpson. Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever? Yeah. Okay, wait a minute, what's in the police? What is he doing? Is he threatening you? He's freaking going nuts. Okay, has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you? You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to get ready. Okay, just stay on the line. I don't want to stay on the line. Just stay on the line so we can know what's going on until the police get there, okay? Okay, Nicole? Just a moment. Does he have any weapons? I don't know. Okay. He went home and hurried back. I guess they're upstairs sleeping and I don't want anything to happen. Okay, just a moment. Is he on drugs or anything? No. Okay. Just stay on the line, just in case he comes in. I need to hear what's going on, all right? You hear him outside? Is he yelling? Yeah. Okay. Has he been drinking? No. Okay. One fellow unit, additional domestic violence, 325 South Gretna Greenway. The suspect has returned in a white Bronco. Monitor comment, incident 4221. Okay, Nicole? Is he still outdoors? Or? He's in the backyard. He's in the backyard? Screaming at my roommate without me and at me. Here. Okay. Okay, what is he saying? Oh, something about some guy I know and hookers and keys and I started this shit before and it's all my fault. And now what am I going to do? Get the police in on this? And the whole thing. It's all my fault. I started this before. Brother. I only get this posted. Okay. Has he hit you today or no? No. Okay, you don't need any paramedics or anything? Okay. You just want him to leave? My door. He broke the whole back door in. And then he left and he came back? And he came and he practically knocked my upstairs door down, but he pounded it, and then he screamed and hollered, and I tried to get him out of his bedroom because the kids were sleeping in there. Okay. And then he wanted somebody's phone number, and I gave him my phone book, or I gave clips my phone book down to write down the phone number that he wanted, and then he took my phone book with all my stuff in it. Okay, so basically you guys have just been arguing? Is he inside right now? Okay, just a moment. Is he talking to you? Yeah. Are you locked in a room or something? No, he can come right in. I'm not going where the kids are because the kids are... You think he's going to hit you? I don't know. Okay. Stay on the line. Don't hang it up, okay? What is he saying? What is he saying? Give me a call before this possible ETA on what's going on? It's just a domestic violence at 30, currently 325 South Gretna Greenway. The suspect is down. still yelling at you? Just stay on line, okay? 807 81, 807 325 South Gretna Greenway, 325 South Gretna Greenway, 807 81, code your line to 4221, are you 825? Is there something that you did? It always comes back. Is your roommate talking to him? No, I could talk. Listen to him. I know. So do you have any weapons or anything with him right now? Okay. Where is he standing? In the back doorway. In the house. Okay. Could you just please, OJ, could you please? Is he leaving? No. Does he know you're on the phone with the police? No. Okay. Where are the kids at right now? Up in my room. Can they hear him yelling? I don't know. Room's the only one quiet. Is there someone up there with the kids? No.
I think we've heard enough of that. You'll have this tape in the jury room. I'm just a messenger, and I think you get the message, and you get the message straight out of his mouth. I mean, you hear this man in the background raging. He is raging about a picture of a man he saw at Nicole's house, a picture of a man she had apparently dated. How many months before? How many months did Nicole say? About 18 months or something like that. It's on the tape. And Nicole said on that tape as well that it always comes up. This man, that issue, always comes up. Apparently, this man and that issue is of great concern to the defendant, of so much concern that he apparently just can't get it out of his system. He can't put it behind him. He can't forget it. He can't forget it. And you hear him back there yelling and screaming at Nicole, and you hear the language, and you hear the things that he's saying about her, and you hear him in the background say, I don't give a shit anymore. That's what he said. An old relationship, a past boyfriend, a boyfriend she apparently had at a time after she moved away from his home and after she filed for divorce. A year and a half. And he still hadn't gotten over it. And it's October 25 in 1993. And Nicole doesn't know it at the time. She knows he's going to kill her at some point, but she doesn't know at the time that she only has 8 months to live. Now, we offer this tape to you, as I said before, so that you would know who you're dealing with. And because you have a right to see him, the private side of him. When you listen to the 911 call, as you take it back into the jury room, listen to the part where she tries to calm him, where she's on the phone and it sounds as if he's getting closer to her because you can hear his voice more clearly and his voice is raised even higher than before. And she tries to calm him. And as she's trying to calm him, she tries to calm him by using a calm voice of her own. You get what I'm saying? I mean, she says, oh, OJ, OJ. Now, 3 minutes before, she was in tears on the phone calling the 911 operator, but when he comes near, he's enraged. She is trying to calm him down with a calm voice. What does that mean? I mean, is that helpful to you at all? Let me suggest to you that what that means is that she's been there before. She apparently feels as if she has a way, some tactic or some approach that might help calm him down. It's Nicole's approach to her problem when the defendant becomes enraged, a calm voice. And she is scared, and you know she's scared. You can hear the fear. You can hear the terror in her voice when she calls the 911 operator. But when he gets close and when she gets to the point where she has to calm him down, she's the calm one. She's the one who is in jeopardy. But she's the one with the calm voice. 1993 was the same year that the defendant talked to Cato Kalin. Remember, Cato Kalin was living at Gretna Green with Nicole. He was living in the back in the guest house. And he talked to Cato just before Nicole moved to Bundy. You remember that conversation? You recall that testimony? This is an example of this man's control, of the control he had over Nicole, the control he exercised over her. Cato was living with her. Cato's going to be paying rent to her, to Nicole. This is money. This is income. Okay? She's divorced from this man. She is not his wife. She is not his wife. She has not been his wife since 1992. Okay? Cato lives there. She has no relationship, no intimate relationship with Cato. She has a right to have him live there in the guest house if she wants. And as she moves to Bundy, if she wants Cato to rent a room, she has that right. I mean, this is 1993. He has no right to interfere with that, but he wants to exercise control over her. He's about control. This is all about control, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about control. The beating, the humiliation, all of that. That's how you control people. You beat them down. They lose their self-esteem. You humiliate them, and pretty soon, they're like puppies. He talked to Cato, and he said to Cato that it wouldn't be a good idea if he moved to Bundy. It wouldn't be right. Remember? Well, you know, you meet people and you get involved in relationships, and he continued his relationship with Nicole, and you have to take people at face value and take them how they, take it how it comes to you. You know what I'm saying? If he wanted to be with Nicole, then he should be with Nicole, the way she is. And if the way she is that she needs a tenant to pay rent, to make it or whatever, that's her thing. He should just accept that, but he doesn't. He talks to Cato, and what does he do? He bribes him. He bribes him away from her. Cato was going to be paying $450 to $500 rent at Bundy. He bribes Cato away, and what does he do? How does he do it? Cato, come live with me over at Rockingham. We got the jacuzzi, the pool, your stage, the tennis court. You got your own room. And what's it going to cost you? What's it going to cost Cato? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Scratch. It's free. He's bribed Cato away from her, and she is upset about it. You heard the testimony. Nicole talked to Cato, and she begged him not to do as the defendant asked. She told Cato that he was being manipulated. This is control. But Cato told you from the witness stand that the deal was too sweet. It was a freebie, free stuff, free rent and board, free room and board. How could he turn it down? He turned his back on Nicole, and Nicole was angry about that. Nicole named her dog Cato. Think about that. Nicole named her dog Cato. I'm not suggesting to you that this man was angry and depressed and consumed with jealousy each and every moment of the day or each day that he was with Nicole. I'm not saying that. I'm sure that there were periods of calm. I'm sure that there were periods when they had a good time. I'm sure there were times and periods when things worked out great for both of them. But always beneath the surface looms this jealousy and this anger and this passion and that rage, the rage you just heard on that tape. And you know, if you're in Nicole's position and you know all about this, and you know that, hey, you know, there are certain things that can set him off, that can set that fuse to burning, that can make that fuse shorter and shorter, then you're going to tread lightly, right? You're going to try and do everything you can not to upset him. And that's control. They went back and forth in their relationship. They'd make up, then they'd break up. They'd try to get together. They had kids. That sounds natural, right? I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with that per se. And as I understand the testimonies, I recall that they were together again in the spring of 1994. Despite all of that, despite everything that had happened up until this point, in 1994, she moves in January to Bundy, and in the spring she begins dating the defendant again. And Cato Kalin told you from the witness stand that they had some kind of commitment either to each other or she to him. I'm not sure of all the details, but you heard the testimony. And if my memory fails me, then, you know, rely on the testimony in case I'm incorrect. But they had some kind of agreement or commitment that she would date only him or wouldn't date anybody else before he left to go to New York for football season. She was supposed to date only him until August. And Cato said that that was a commitment, that they had that commitment. Well, somebody broke the commitment apparently. And May 19, as I recall, was Nicole's birthday. And for her birthday, he gave her an expensive bracelet. And on her birthday as well, as I recall, she was sick with pneumonia. Was that the testimony? She was sick. And I think someone said, and it may have been Miss Arnell Simpson, that the defendant had brought her soup, taken soup over to her on her birthday because she was sick, or maybe the day after her birthday, but sometime around that time period. But for some reason, Nicole broke off their relationship. She broke off the relationship. For some reason, on May 22nd or thereabouts, Nicole got the courage, strength to break this relationship. Now, you have to assume that when someone moves out of your house, that that's an attempt to break off a relationship. And you would think that he would get the point. When she filed for divorce, you would think that he would get the point. Then when the divorce is final, you would think that he would get the point. But they go back and forth for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's all his fault. I'm sure to some extent it's Nicole's fault also, if we can fault anybody for this. But she returns that bracelet on or about May 22, 1994. She couldn't be bought. She couldn't be controlled anymore. She had had enough. And when you look at the things that transpire after May 22, 1994, you get the sense, don't you, that he finally got the message? It's over. It's over. She can't be bought. You can give me this expensive gift if you want to. That's fine. But I'm not staying in this relationship. Take it back. And she gave it back to him. And the defense would like you to think that this was that there was no big deal to this breakup, that nobody was upset, that he wasn't upset about it. But was he? Christian Reichard testified from the witness stand for the defense, and he told you that the defendant had been depressed during the weeks leading up to the murder. He had been depressed because of his failing relationship with Nicole. He was depressed because she couldn't make up her mind as to whether or not she wanted to stay in the relationship. You recall that testimony? He was depressed about that. But it seems to me that perhaps this depression turned to anger. Do you have the IRS letter? In the days that followed, and we don't know everything that happened between them in the days that followed, but we know that at some point there was a letter that he wrote to her. We assume that he wrote it because his signature is on the bottom, and this letter has been marked as evidence, and Mr. Fairlow will get the exhibit number. The actual letter has been marked as evidence. And the letter was dated June 6th. And it's signed O.J. Simpson. And in the letter, now remember, there are no hard feelings here if you believe the defense case. And this letter begins, on the advice of legal counsel and because of the change in our circumstances, I'm compelled to put you on written notice that you do not have my permission to use my address at Rockingham as your residence or mailing address for any purpose, including but not limited to information and tax returns filed with any taxing entity. Well, what is this? What does this letter mean? How is this letter helpful to you? How many times do we break up with someone and then send them a letter a few days later or 2 weeks later in legalese? And what are the changes in their circumstances that he's referring to? The change in their circumstances is that she has decided that she does not want to be with him anymore. And now he's out to hurt her. He's going to hurt her. This letter is People's 25, Your Honor. Did Nicole have some kind of tax problem? Looks like it. In the last paragraph, he says, I cannot take part in any course of action by you that might be misleading to the IRS or the Franchise Tax Board. What is he suggesting to her? How should she receive this letter? And look at the carbon copy. Mr. Cochran asked someone on the witness stand if they knew that Marvin Goodfriend was his accountant, as I recall. We've heard that Leroy Taft is his lawyer. A carbon copy to his lawyer and his accountant. What's going on here? This is supposed to be an amiable breakup? No hard feelings? This is control. This is a subtle threat. If you disagree with me, fine. If the defense disagrees with me, that's fine as well. But let me tell you something. When the defense began the defense case, well, not the defense case, but when Mr. Cochran did his opening statement, he told you about a witness he intended to call. And this witness seemed to be a pretty important witness, and would seem to be, given the evidence that you've heard in this case. He told you about a woman named Dr. Lenore Walker. And he said to you at page 11783 that there's an expert in the U.S. whose name is Dr. Lenore Walker, and that she is, by all accounts, the #1 expert in America on the field of domestic violence. And he said that she has been called by some the mother of the battered women syndrome. He went on to tell you that she was a psychologist. And she had interviewed and tested the defendant. The things that I'm saying to you and discussing with you today, the testimony that you heard from the witness stand about the domestic violence, the beating, the abuse, the intimidation, the threats, the stalking. Did they call one witness to rebut any of that testimony? They called 58 witnesses. How many came to address the 1989 incident, or the October 23, 1993 incident that you heard on the tape? Or why didn't they call Dr. Walker? who could have put this all in perspective for you if what the witnesses said in this case aren't true. I mean, it wasn't true. Dr. Walker could have interpreted this letter for you. But they didn't call Dr. Walker. They wouldn't call Dr. Walker. They better not have called Dr. Walker. And Dr. Walker never stepped foot into this courtroom while you were here in the jury box. They are a group of very, very fine lawyers. They called some of the most expensive experts money could buy. But we didn't see Dr. Walker. We didn't see her explain to you why this letter is insignificant, if that's the defense position, or why this cycle of violence that led up to Nicole's murder doesn't help to establish motive from a practical sense. And there was something that he said to you on page 11793, and I want to take a moment and show it to Mr. Cochran before I read it, if I can. Something Mr. Cochran told you he would present to you in this case. And at page 11793, he said to you, I'm going to tell you about the facts. And he says, so you will hear from Dr. Walker, and you will hear about the battery of tests, and I think you will find that she will say that in looking at O.J. Simpson, she testified, that in looking at O.J. Simpson and interviewing him and looking at him, at this point she finds no evidence of antisocial personality disorder, and I think you will find that becomes very important in this case. So where is Dr. Walker to come here to testify, to take the witness stand, to sit in a blue chair and tell you that none of this is important, that everything I've told you for the last 3 hours is insignificant and unimportant? Where is she to tell you that he does not suffer from some antisocial personality disorder? She ain't here. And had she come here and expressed an opinion that this was unimportant, we could have cross-examined her. But they can't touch this. They can't touch this. This is important evidence. You have to consider it when you consider motive, when you consider the issue of identity, the identity of this man as the killer of these two people. You have to consider this on the issue of premeditation. This is important evidence. As the days proceeded on, we know that he hired an interior decorator. As I recall the testimony, Paula Barbieri, his new girlfriend, the one that he was so happy with. It's odd, but on the one hand, they say he was happy with Paula Barbieri. On the other hand, Cato said that he told him, the defendant told Cato, that he, the defendant, didn't know if Paula was the one. I don't know. But let me tell you something about this letter, just to go back, and this whole interior decorator situation. The fuse is burning, and it is getting short. Okay, it's getting short. He is trying to erase her presence, for instance, from his home. Okay, this is how short the fuse is getting. He's trying to erase her presence from his home. He has hired an interior decorator to redecorate the bedroom, the master bedroom, was it? And the bathroom. They're going to rip out the plumbing. The places she had been, they are going to change. They are going to erase her presence from the house. He is going to erase her presence from the house, or at least he's going to try. He is angry and he is upset. He has been rejected, and he doesn't like that rejection. And he's trying to get over her. He's trying to get beyond this. And so what does he do? And what does he do? And what does he do? They do work awfully hard, so I can't get upset at them. Page 19.
I believe it is. Mr. Fairley, what evidence exhibit is this? Let me know. Mr. Darden.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So what does he do? He gets rid of her wedding photo, their wedding picture, puts it underneath the bed. He is trying to get beyond this, but he can't get beyond this because the fuse is burning, because he is upset and angry that the relationship was terminated by her. I mean, you look at that picture, you look at them. After you're divorced and after you break up with someone, you don't usually keep the pictures out, right? I mean, you don't. But do you throw them underneath the bed? You put them in a box, or you get rid of them altogether? That's what you do. But in this case, in his case, he is trying to get over her, but he can't. He can't get over her. He can't get beyond this. On the one hand, he throws his picture underneath the bed. And on the one hand, she is out of sight, and he hopes out of mind. But on the other hand, she's just beneath the bed, where he has access to it, where he can grab it, and where he can look at it. He is beginning to obsess with her. He is becoming obsessive with her, and he is trying to replace her at the same time with Paula. His relationship with Paula supposedly blooms again all of a sudden at about this time, right after she breaks up with him. If she broke up with him on May 22nd, and by June the 6th or whatever, he and Paula are back together, and now they're ripping the plumbing out of the house. You know, people need space. You need time when you're in a relationship, especially one that lasted 17 years. He is trying to replace Nicole with Paula, and he is trying to find some sense of control. But the fuse is burning. And I just wish Dr. Walker had been here to help explain this to you. I'm sure she could have done a better job of it than I have so far. And so we move on. The days pass, and that photo was People's 536, the wedding photo. And the days pass, and we begin to approach June 12th, the day of the recital. You recall that the defendant had conversations with Cato Kalin that day, and he talked about Nicole. He talked about her dress. He talked about how short it was. He talked about the relationship being over. It didn't appear, and you tell me, maybe you disagree, that he and Cato Kalin had that kind of relationship, the kind of relationship where he would vent his frustrations regarding Nicole to Cato. I don't know. You saw Cato, and I don't know why anybody wanted to discuss the personal problems with Cato Kalin, but he did. And he talked about Nicole a couple of times that day to Cato Kalin. and Marcia cross-examined Cato Kalin and directly examined Cato Kalin, and they talked about those conversations. And as Marcia mentioned yesterday, Cato had a bias, and he was biased in favor of the defendant. He minimized things. That's not to say that he just outright lied about things, but he minimized things. I think he minimized the tone of the defendant's voice when he talked about Nicole. I think he minimized just how upset the defendant was when he talked about Nicole. But hey, whatever. The defendant supposedly seen Paula. It's the day of the recital. And what happened that day? Well, the fuse got shorter. I'll tell you why. Paula's new girlfriend wanted to go to the recital. The recital where Sydney was going to be performing over at the school. And they had an argument about that, for lack of a better term. They had a disagreement about that. She wanted to go. He didn't want her to go. He wanted to go alone. He told Cato that they had a disagreement about that, and she was upset. Well, why is that important? It's important because she left. It's important because Paula left. She left Rockingham. She left Los Angeles. But apparently he didn't know that. Apparently they had their disagreement about the recital. Paula got mad. Paula left town. It's pretty apparent that he didn't know that. I can't tell you how bad that disagreement was, or if there were raised voices or whatever. We don't have any of that in the testimony or in the evidence in this case. But we do know that Paula left and that he didn't know where Paula had gone. And the fuse is getting shorter, because what happened that day is this. Paula, as a woman, I guess she's asserting her womanhood. She's supposed to be his woman now. She wants to go to the recital. Why not? He won't let her. Why won't he let her? Because he still has hope for Nicole. He still has some hope. He still has some hope. He doesn't want Paula to go to the recital. He won't let Paula go to the recital. And Paula realizes why. And she packs up and she leaves. That afternoon, the defendant called Nicole. We'll get the right photo board. That afternoon, he called Nicole's house. See, he's still got hope. He's got hope that, she's always come back, right? Each and every time that they've gone back and forth many, many times. They've always gotten back together. She's always come back. But she isn't coming back this time. But he still has hope. He's put in a catch-22 situation of sorts that day when he and Paula talk about her going to the recital. He has to make a choice that day. He's either going to go to the recital where Nicole is, alone, hope in hand, or he's going to choose Paula. It's either Nicole or Paula. If he takes Paula to the recital, take her out in public, take her around Nicole, take her around the Brown family. He's made a choice now, okay? It's public. Everybody knows he has made a choice. He is now with Paula. But he couldn't make that choice because he still had hope, and he still had hope for Nicole. And so he called Nicole on June 12th. He called her and talked to her at 2:18 in the afternoon. It was a 4-minute phone call. And something happened during that phone call. But let me tell you what else. That after he finished that 4-minute phone call with Nicole, he tried to call Paula. As soon as he hung up with Nicole, he tried to call Paula in the 305 area code, Florida, right here. The phone call it began at 2:18, it lasted 4 minutes. At 2:22, he's calling Florida. Something happened. I don't know what happened. Something happened. Whatever happened, during that phone call, he had a need to talk to Paula thereafter or immediately thereafter. But he's calling Florida looking for Paula, but we know from the testimony and the evidence in this case already that Paula's in Las Vegas in a hotel room being paid for by Michael Bolton. He doesn't know where she is. Sounds like she got upset and stormed off and went about her business. But he can't find Paula. He's having a problem with Nicole. He's about to lose all the women, both the women in his life. And the fuse is getting shorter, folks. It's getting shorter. And the frustration is building. Okay? And the anger is building. And something has triggered his anger, because in all of this, this is a tension. This entire relationship over a 10-year period is filled with tension because of the doors being kicked in and the punches and the slaps and the intimidation and the control and all of that. I mean, this is a very, very tense relationship, and things are about to explode because he has that conversation with her. He tries to call Paula. He can't find Paula, and by the time he gets to that recital that afternoon, around 5 o'clock, he is fit to be tied. He is angry. You heard the testimony of Candace Garvey, Steve Garvey's wife. She was also at the recital. She knows the defendant. She'd known him for a long time. He came into the recital. She and Steve spoke to him. They said hello. How are you? How are you doing? And what was her testimony? What was his response? There was no response immediately. If you recall her testimony, he had a blank stare on his face. He was distracted. She told you that it was as if he looked right through her, as if he didn't recognize that she was there. And she told you that his demeanor that afternoon in the recital frightened her. And she told you that he was angry. And Denise Brown testified as well about that recital. And they told you that he was angry and he didn't look to be or act like the O.J. Simpson they had come to know. Candace Garvey said that he was distant, that his anger was simmering, that he had this look of simmering anger. He was in a slow burn and the fuse was getting shorter. Something set him off, and perhaps what set him off was this 4-minute phone call at 2 in the afternoon. Perhaps his inability to find Paula that afternoon set him off. Okay, now the fuse is really burning, now the fuse is getting shorter, and there's going to be an explosion, folks. There's going to be an explosion. He arrives at the recital, he sees Candace Garvey, literally ignores her, he's angry. He takes a seat in the auditorium. He sees the Brown family seated in the auditorium. Okay. Judith Brown, Lou Brown, Nicole's parents, and her sisters. Nicole is seated with them or near them. He goes over to the Brown family and he greets everybody in the family, every one of them. He greets everybody but Nicole. He doesn't address Nicole. This is a family event, right? His daughter, Nicole's daughter, at the recital dancing, but he doesn't address her because he is angry. He is consumed with anger, and the fuse is getting shorter. He doesn't appear like the O.J. that they knew, the man that they knew. Candace Garvey is frightened by his demeanor, and what does he do? He takes a seat behind the Brown family. And there are no seats near the Brown family, so nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with the fact that he takes a seat behind the Brown family. But as Denise Brown told you on the witness stand, after a few minutes, he just abruptly got up and moved. He got up, took a chair, and in the dark, in this dark auditorium, because the program was going on, he takes that chair and he moves it into the corner and he sits in the corner of the auditorium. Denise Brown told you that she could not understand. She did not understand why he did that. She told you on the witness stand that she didn't say anything to offend him. Nobody said anything to offend him. Why is he so angry? Who is he angry at? Well, common sense will tell us that he's angry at Nicole. Why? Because he didn't address her. But for another reason as well. as he sits there in the corner in the dark, he isn't watching the program on the stage. He's watching Nicole. Candace Garvey told you this, Denise Brown told you this as well, that whenever they looked over at the defendant, that he was not looking at the stage or the program on the stage or the kids dancing up on the stage. They told you that every time they looked over in that dark corner at the defendant, he was staring at Nicole. He was staring at Nicole, and that simmering anger that he had, folks, he was about to lose control. The fuse is getting shorter, the fuse is getting shorter, and there's about to be an explosion. He is about to lose control. And he's about to lose control like he did on those earlier occasions. And sure, he didn't kill her on those earlier occasions in October of '93 or in 1989. But that was then, and back then the fuse was a lot longer. But now, the fuse is way short. It's awfully short. And when the program was over, clearly he knew that the relationship was over. In the past, he had done things to Nicole, and she had come back. But not only that, the Brown family. He still had the Brown family. But when you consider the evidence in this case, you see that after the recital, Nicole and the kids and the Brown family went to the Mezzaluna for dinner. They didn't invite him to go. He has been rejected, completely rejected. He has been rejected in public, and this is how these things work. This is how these things work. You may sit here and think, oh, well, this isn't such a big deal. Well, sure. Perhaps in your lives and in your relationship, this wouldn't be such a big deal. But you have to put it in the context of the relationship that they've had. This is a big deal. It is a big deal to him. And he is rejected in public. They go off to dinner. He's left to go off to dinner with Kato Kalin. He isn't used to rejection, by the way. He's a celebrity. We talked about that earlier. Celebrities get, you get the best tables. You always get everything you want. You get what you want. There are no rules for celebrities. But on June 12th, he isn't getting what he wants. And so he goes home. And the fuse is getting shorter. And it's getting shorter. And he talks to Kato Kalin, and he complains about the dress she wore. And the fuse is getting shorter. Christian Reichardt was called by the defense, and he testified that he spoke to the defendant at 9 o'clock that night. And then when he spoke to the defendant, that the defendant was jovial, happier than he'd been in weeks. He went from simmering anger at the recital to jovial at 9 p.m. that night. Well, what happened? Why is that? It's because the defendant has developed a plan. He has come up with a plan to rid himself of the problem that has plagued him for 17 years. And he talks to Reichardt. He called Reichardt, as a matter of fact, if you believe that testimony. So many weird things going on that evening. He wants $5 for the sky cap. Cato gives him a 20. He's driving the Bentley to McDonald's. He's calling Christian Reichardt at 9 o'clock, and he tells Reichardt that he's packing right then. 9 o'clock, he's packing to go to the airport. That was the testimony from Reichardt. But then you have these other witnesses come in, Miss Arnell Simpson and Gigi, the maid. They come in and they tell you that he always packs at the very, very last minute. He rushes around the house, and how everybody knows that he does that. What is going on here? Why is he packing now? Why is he doing these things with Kato Kalin? Why is he jovial all of a sudden, if you believe Christian Reichardt? It's because he has a plan and he knows what he is going to do. He has had enough. The public rejection that day is enough. Folks, let me tell you, the fuse is so short at this point that he is about to explode. The next thing we know, he's in that Bronco. He is in the Bronco at 10 o'clock. or earlier. We don't know when exactly he got into that Bronco, but we know that at 10 o'clock he's into that Bronco, and he is driving in that Bronco. And why wouldn't he be? How do we know that? We know that, as Ms. Clark said, because he keeps the phone in the Bronco, and he is panicked, and he is out of control, and he needs someone or something to help calm him. And so what does he do? He calls Paula. But he calls Paula in two places. He calls Paula at a 310 area code in L.A., and she isn't there. Then he turns around and he calls Paula at a 305 area code, and she ain't there either. Paula Barbieri probably could have stopped this whole thing that night if she had been there to receive his phone call. But now Paula's gone, Nicole is gone, and whose fault is all of this? It isn't his fault. It isn't the defendant's fault. It's Nicole's fault. It's Nicole's fault. And that's... Even in 1989 when he beat her, when he came out of the house, he blamed her. Remember when he spoke to Edwards? He didn't want her in the house anymore. He had two other women. And then we come to find out that she found out that he had been with two women, and she was upset about that and wouldn't sleep with him. But he took it out on her. When you listen to the October 25, 1993 911 tape, he's blaming her because she had a relationship with a man a year and a half before, after she had moved out, after she had filed for divorce, when she was literally a single woman out there on her own. He always blamed her. Everything was her fault. And his breakup, his problems with Paula, the fact that he lost Paula was her fault. It was her fault because she went back and forth in terms of their relationship, and the fuse was short, and the fuse is about to explode. You're going to take a 10:30 break, Your Honor?
Yes.
And the bomb will explode when we come back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our mid-morning break at this time. Remember all my admonitions to you. We'll stand in recess for 15 minutes. Matter, all parties are again present. All right, Deputy Trier, let's have the jurors, please. And let the record reflect that we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. And Mr. Darden, you may continue with your argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're getting there. I've talked much longer than I'd ever expected. And I don't apologize for that because I think it's necessary that we have this discussion.
Keep your voice up just a little so I can hear, because you're
Okay.
turned away. Thank you.
So I apologize in a sense, I guess, but I have a duty and you have a duty, and I'm not going to have much of an opportunity later, I think, to talk to you. And so I wanted to share these things with you because I think they're important and because I think they may help guide you in your deliberations. But when we left off, we were talking about the fuse, how short the fuse was getting, and how the defendant was on his way to Bundy in that white Bronco. The same Bronco he drove that night in October of 1993. And so he's on his way, and he is panicked, and he is out of control, and he's calling Paula, and he can't find Paula. He calls her in L.A., he calls her in Florida. She's nowhere to be found. He can't find her. He has lost her. And he has lost Nicole. And whose fault is this? It's Nicole's fault. He made a choice that day. He chose Nicole over Paula, and he lost them both. And so he arrives at Bundy, and Ms. Clark discussed with you yesterday the details of the murder, of both murders. And I don't want to, repeat all that she said. But one of the things that she said that I just want to elaborate on a little bit is his choice, his weapon choice, the use of a knife. This is a rage killing, and it is upfront, and it is personal. And that is why you see all the brutality that you see. Common sense tells us that. I mean, we know that just from life experience and from living in L.A. We know what kind of killing this is. This is a rage killing. And he's using a knife because he is there to settle a personal score, a personal vendetta that he has. He stabs this woman in the neck. And he's right there. I mean, it's one-on-one. And the rage that he has, the anger, the hate that he has for her that night, at that time, it's like it flows out of him and into the knife, and from the knife into her. Into her. And he kills Goldman, and he kills her in this rage. And let me make it clear to you. He's enraged, but he has made a conscious decision, a premeditated decision, a deliberate decision to go there and do what he is about to do to this woman. Otherwise, why would he take a big knife with him, right? He killed her that way because he wanted to make a statement. He wanted to teach her a lesson. He wanted to let her know. He wanted her to be there face to face to know just who it was who was doing this to her. With each thrust of that knife into her body and into Ron's body, there is a release, a small release. It's like a tiny time capsule, like contact. There is a release, a gradual release of that anger and that rage. And he stabs and he cuts and he slices until that rage is gone and until these people are dead. And after that rage is gone, he's better. One of the most remarkable things about this case is that after this man, after he did this to these two people, he didn't run away. He didn't jog away. Apparently, he didn't limp away. You heard Agent Bonziak's testimony. He just walked away. He had released all of that rage and that anger. during this homicidal fit he was having as he killed these two people. And I'm just a messenger. And I hate to be the one to stand here and tell you about these things, but this is a murder case. And this is what he did. All these things we talked about, these are the things that he did. This is how he lived. This is his life. Okay. And so I think we've come full circle at this point. We've shown you that he had the opportunity to kill. We've shown you that he had the motive, that he had a motive to kill. We've shown you in this trial that he was physically capable of killing. We've shown you that he had a reason to kill. We've shown you that he would have killed, could have killed, and did kill these two people. He's a murderer. He was also one hell of a great football player. But he's still a murderer. And so we've come full circle. There was Ron, and there was Nicole. And, Ron, he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nicole, she was in the wrong place for a long time. And there's this common factor, this common element between the two of them. The one thing they had in common was this man, this defendant. And so we began with them, two very much alive, vibrant human beings. We went through 1989 and 1985 through the beating he inflicted on her. And we went from that in 85 into 1989. And we came to this point on June 12 at Bundy. And so we've come full circle. And the only common element in all of this, and the only direction in which all the evidence points, is to O.J. Simpson. And I told you when this began that I had the hardest job. Nobody wants to do anything to this man. We don't. There's nothing personal about this. But the law is the law. And it applies to us. It applies to you. It has to apply to him. He made a promise a long time ago. He promised to love and to cherish and to keep her. He married her, and he made those promises to her. He promised to be her husband, and he was. And let me say to you that every wife killer or ex-wife killer starts off as a loving husband. And in every household where there's a marriage between a man and a woman, there's a picture just like that picture right there. There's a picture just like that on every mantle in every home where the husband killed the wife. What he did that night on June 12th, the night of June 12th, to these two people, this brutality, is a violation of every law, high and low, that we can possibly think of. And I suppose there's some people that say, hey, we should cut him some slack. And, if this were a case of, a theft or embezzlement or something like that, you can always make restitution. But this is a very, very serious charge. Two people are dead. And let me say that what you do in this case is entirely up to you. I mean, you're the jury. When I sit down, I'm done. I've completed my duty. I've done what the law requires me to do. I have lived up to the oath, my oath, as a member of the district attorney's office. And we hope we presented the best evidence we could. And if we didn't present the best evidence we could, don't hold that against us. I just want you to, when the time comes to go into the jury room, I just want you to, somebody just say, let's calm down, let's elect a foreperson, let's read the law, let's take a minute and let's just look at the evidence. I'd just like you to use your common sense when you do. When you do that, you use your common sense when you try to be objective, when you remove all the emotion out of this case, when you remove all of the sympathy and passion, and when you just look at the facts, the evidence as best you can, you'll come up with the right decision. The world's watching. Everybody wants to know what you're going to do. Marcia Clark and I know you're going to do the right thing under the law. And whatever you do, the decision is yours. And I'm glad that it's not mine. Let me turn my attention and hopefully yours to the defense case, if I can talk about that a little while. They put on a defense. They called 58 witnesses. And they called 58 witnesses in this case, presumably to help raise a reasonable doubt in your mind as to the guilt of this man. And you heard from some real muckety-mucks, some real big shots in the field of science and forensic science and DNA, and you heard from Henry Lee. A real impressive group of experts, I suppose. But when you consider our case, you have to consider their case as well. And you have to assess the credibility of their witnesses just like you have to assess the credibility of our witnesses. And when it comes to assessing the credibility of witnesses, you apply the same standard regardless of whether it's a defense witness or a prosecution witness. You have to decide whether or not that expert testimony is worth anything or what it's worth. I hope that when you do that, I hope you keep in mind that, people made a lot of money testifying in this case. And you should consider that on the issue or question of whether or not those witnesses are biased. But study the defense case carefully. I insist that you do, as painful as some of it might be for you. But consider this. The defense that they put on in this case, it wasn't really an affirmative defense. It wasn't the kind of defense where they show you that he wasn't there, okay, at the time of the murder. They never did that. They never showed you that. What they did was they attacked all of our evidence. Well, not all of it. They didn't attack the domestic violence. There are lots of things that they attacked initially. Only to find out, of course, only for you to find out that, well, they didn't have a chance with it. But what you really wanted to know in that defense case, and I can't talk to you directly, but I'm going to assume you're reasonable people, you have common sense, good common sense, you're all successful at life. What you really wanted to know, correct? Maybe I'm wrong, but what you really wanted to know was where was he at the time of the murders, right? Where was that Bronco? Had they proven to you that that Bronco was not at Bundy or could not have been at Bundy, that would have been very helpful to you. Would that not have been impressive to you? Isn't that the kind of evidence you want to hear, that you want to see, credible, reliable evidence on that issue? That's the kind of evidence that raises a reasonable doubt. But they didn't do that. They didn't put on that kind of evidence because they couldn't put on that kind of evidence. They don't have that kind of evidence. We all know where the Bronco was at 10:15. It was at Bundy. You would have liked to have known that some other person was with Nicole Brown or Ron Goldman, right? I mean, wouldn't you not have liked to have seen some evidence from some witness that the person that killed these two people was someone other than the defendant? When Mr. Cochran spoke to you during his opening statement, he talked to you about witnesses that he intended to call, and he gave you the names of those witnesses, and he told you what they were going to say. You know, and we did the same thing. I did the same thing. You know, on domestic violence, I told you I was going to call a few other people. I didn't. I think you got the point. You know, and I can't keep you here forever. Apparently, this sequestration thing is a real drag, right? And you'd like to end this experience, and I can understand that. But he promised to present to you the testimony of some witnesses who had they testified, could have perhaps raised a reasonable doubt in this case. So where are those people? Who are those people? Well, one of those people he mentioned was a woman named Rosa Lopez. Do you remember this in his opening statement? He said that Rosa Lopez was the maid that lived next door to 360 North Rockingham, and that she would come in here and testify that the Bronco was parked at 8 p.m. that night, the night of June 11th, that it was parked in the exact same place the police found it the next day. And that it was parked in the exact same manner. Tail sticking out. Remember that? He said he was going to present that testimony to you. He was going to call this witness. Well, where is she? Where was she? You would have liked to have heard that testimony, wouldn't you? He didn't call her. He told you about a woman named Marianne Gerchis, and he told you that she would testify that she was out on Bundy Avenue and that she saw 4 men running, 2 Hispanic men, 2 white men, and that a couple of the men wore knit caps. We have a knit cap at the scene, at the death scene. And that this happened at about 10:45. That's what the defense told you they would do. They told you they would call Mary Ann Gerchis to give you that information. And you may not remember all the names, but I'm sure you remember that when you heard this, that wow, the defense is going to call these people? Whoa, this is going to be some dogfight. I mean, these people are going to come in here and they're going to lay an alibi. Rosa Lopez is going to give an alibi for him by showing that the Bronco had been there all night. Marianne Gerchis was going to come in and testify that, hey, there were other persons, other men, apparently running from the area near 875 South Bundy. A few of them wearing ski caps, consistent with perhaps the real killer, a killer other than this man here. Did they call Marianne Gerchis? What happened to her? Where's that testimony? You'd want to hear that, wouldn't you? And right after they talked about Gerchis, they talked about a man named Tom Lang, who was supposedly down the street on Bundy, who also saw somebody. They told you that Tom Lang saw Nicole Brown standing on the street at Bundy, embracing someone. And that Tom Lang, as he stood there on the street, also saw a man standing some distance behind them, a man who appeared angry, a man standing there with his hands clenched, looking at Nicole and this other person, the person she was embracing. It's right there in the transcript at page 12,255. Where is that person? We already talked about Dr. Lenore Walker. Where's Dr. Walker? He told you Al Cowlings would testify. Where's AC? He told you that the defendant was out chipping golf balls. He told you Paula Barbieri was going to come in and testify about her relationship with the defendant. We didn't get Paula Barbieri. What do we get in terms of her relationship with the defendant? We got other people, people on the peripheral. The stuff you needed to hear to raise a reasonable doubt, and you're reasonable people. Never got presented in this case. It never got presented. What you got was a lot of smoke. You got people like Gertie's telling you that the crime lab isn't, you know, can't be relied on. But then the substrate controls are all clean. You got guys like Professor McDonald out doing glove experiments where he's taking his own blood and then he's putting it on a new pair of Eris gloves and he's rubbing it around like this to see if they shrink. When you look at the defense in this case, you'll see that it really isn't helpful at all. It's all smoke. It really is all smoke. And you know, you're going to have to be careful when you deal with that defense evidence. Now, some of it was pretty good, though. I mean, the stuff they did to Furman was textbook stuff from a legal perspective. But even that, you have to look and say, well, what does it do for us? It upsets us. But then you have to look at all the evidence and see how it's helpful, if it's helpful at all. They called demeanor witnesses, and witnesses to testify to the defendant's demeanor after the murders. And Marcia Clark talked to you about that. You know, murderers don't walk around with neon signs saying, I just killed somebody. When people do things, commit crimes like this one, especially a rage killing like this one, he will calm down. They will calm down. And they want to get away with it. He wanted to get away with it. So he certainly isn't going to do anything that's going to draw attention to himself. But they showed you these photographs. They showed you photographs of the defendant and some women at an event the night before the murders. Remember that? Because they had Carol Connor, the woman with the keyboard vest, come in and testify about the event the night before. Remember she told you that she witnessed an exquisite romantic moment between the defendant and Paula Barbieri? Well, what does that do for you? How does that help you resolve this case? It doesn't help at all, especially when you consider the fact that he and Paula had a disagreement, for lack of a better term, over his refusal to let her go to the recital the next day. But beyond that, it's a picture. He is at this big fancy event, and somebody says, will you please pose with us for a picture? Well, when somebody takes your picture, what's the first thing they say? Cheese. What point is it? What good is it? What value is it in a picture like that when somebody's posing for you? And even in that video after the recital, he sees the video camera, he looks right toward it. Posed for pictures are worthless. And they call that guy McKay. Remember Mr. McKay who worked for the AARP? Was it the AARP? Or the American Association of Psychologists or something like that in Chicago. And there was a golfing event, and the defendant came to the event as the spokesperson for Hertz. And Mr. McKay and the defendant and two other gentlemen took a picture together. They're posing for a picture. Not only are they posing for a picture, the defendant is basically at work. He's a spokesperson for Hertz. It's his job to go out and play golf with these people. So how does that help you? There is nothing in the record that establishes for you and I guess Dr. Walker could have done this. Whether or not, you know, murderers have neon signs over their heads that indicate they're a murderer. How do you know? How do you know? Well, whenever you watch TV, you know, you watch the news and some brutal killing happens and you know, and it's the neighbor did it. And they always interview the neighbors of the neighbor who did the murders, and the reporters always say, how was he? How did he act? What kind of guy was he? Oh, he was a nice guy. They always say that. You don't know. You can't tell. The testimony you heard about demeanor on the airplane and at the airport, it was a waste of your time, really. But if you want to attach some significance to it, you go ahead. It's up to you. I mean, you're the jury. I mean, the only demeanor really that's important is his demeanor that night. You know, after he got into that Bronco and headed toward 875 South Bundy. But this defense that they've put on in this case, it's what we in the profession call a shotgun defense. And it's a defense as old as the law. Way back in the day, way back in the day, even back when I was in law school, old lawyers and old law professors shared with us the old school approach to a criminal defense case. And every lawyer knows this case. You're a criminal defense attorney and you have a tough case, this is what you do. You argue the law. And if the law is against you, you argue the facts. And if the facts are against you, you raise hell and blame somebody else. When the facts and the law are against you, blame the police. Blame the prosecution. Point the finger elsewhere. Create a smokescreen. And that's what they've done in this case, ladies and gentlemen. Smoke and mirrors. That's it. That's what you've got. They put on those timeline witnesses. Remember Ellen Aronson and Danny Mandel? Judy T-Lander. Pilnack. Remember Pilnack? Was she the woman that had 2 watches? If you haven't learned anything else about this case, I'm sure that you've learned that there are people who are banging at the door to get in on this case. Those people and the testimony they had to offer really wasn't helpful at all. I mean, Danny Mandel and Ellen Aronson were on a date, right? A blind date. They went to the Mezzaluna. They say that they walked past Bundy. In fact, Ellen Aronson gave an interview to the police the day after the killings. And she told the police that she passed Bundy at 11 o'clock. But once she heard about the prosecution's theory of the case, well, what did she do? She went back to the Mezzaluna. She talked to Mandel. They got together. And they attempted to reconstruct what they did that evening. She told the police she passed at 11 o'clock. Mandel told the police they passed between 10:28 and 10:32, and he knew that because he checked his watch. But even Mandel himself didn't know whether he had passed 875 South Bundy that night or not. He didn't know. He didn't know. He didn't know until, if it ever happened, he didn't know until he and Aronson got together and started putting their notes together, trying to do, as they say, to reconstruct what happened. His time and passage at 875 South Bundy contradicts her time. They got together on this story because they got together and attempted, as they say, to reconstruct what happened. What good is this testimony to you? And if they want to say they passed at 10:28 and there were no dead bodies out there, well, fine. I don't know how they can say that. I mean, they're on a date. They're looking at each other. That pathway is pitch dark, and we know that. We know that. Because when the bodies were discovered, the police were called, and Risky said he couldn't even see any bodies up that pathway. When he first arrived and got out of his car, he had to walk all the way up the pathway and use a flashlight. The only reason anybody found the bodies was because of Cato. And not Cato the human, Cato the dog. So how much attention were they paying to that particular pathway? There are lots of pathways leading to lots of condominiums on Bundy Drive. That testimony isn't helpful to you at all, but hey, do with it whatever you like. Then they called Francesca Harmon. Remember her? She testified that at 10:20, she was driving west on Dorothy. Okay, she's driving west on Dorothy, which is just south of Bundy. She got to Bundy and she made a right-hand turn. She didn't see any bodies. Then I asked her some questions. I said, well, when you made that right-hand turn at Bundy, did your headlights hit 875 South Bundy? I mean, did they sweep across the front of the condominium? What was her answer? No. I asked her, did your lights hit the gate at 875 South Bundy? She said no. And so I asked her this, well, did you tell the defense that your lights didn't hit the gate at 875 South Bundy? And what was her response? I didn't have to. They were in the car with me. They took her out on a test drive to have her show them the route she took that night. It was clearly apparent that she could not have seen what was in front of 875 South Bundy because her lights never hit the front of the location. And they called her to testify anyway. What does that say about the defense case that you heard? Well, it says they're desperate. That's what it says. We are not wedded to a 10-15 time frame, okay? The killings very well could have happened at 10:15, but they could have happened at 10:17 also. It could have happened at 10:21. We called witnesses to the stand to testify to the point in time that they first heard the wail of that dog, of Cato. Because we know that the wail was a plaintive wail. And we know that the dog was in distress. And so we know that something was happening, something very bad was happening to the dog's master. And if the dog is first heard around 10:15, I don't know. That may mean that the defendant is hiding outside and the dog here is aware of it. It may not mean necessarily that the killing happened at that specific time. It happened sometime around 10:15. We can't give you the exact time. We can't give you the exact time to the minute. If they want to push the time to 10:30, push it to 10:30. Because any way you look at it, he's still got time to get to Bundy, because we know he's in the Bronco at 10:03. He's got time to get to Bundy to do these killings and to get back to Rockingham by 10:54 or 10:45. Their witness, Robert Heitstra, told you that on a Sunday night, you could easily drive from 875 South Bundy to the defendant's house. And he knows that because Heitstra, he worked next door at the Salingers. Okay, he worked at the defendant's neighbor's house. He told you that you could drive there from 875 South Bundy with under 4 minutes on a Sunday night easy. So it doesn't make, makes us no difference. Makes us no difference at all as far as all of the timing is concerned. But they also called Denise Pilnack, the woman that wore 2 watches, and she came in here and showed you her 2 watches so that you would find her credible and believe her, because she wanted to get in on this case. Weird stuff. Weird stuff. But you, I don't know. She testified that she drove, what did she drive? No, she came home with Judy T. Lander, and she made some phone calls, and she kicked T. Lander out of her house at a certain time and all of this. And how does she, on all of that, how does she know that? Well, because 6 months after the murders, she put together this timeline. 6 months later. So how was that helpful? And then there's T. Lander, and she's describing her drive up Bundy or around or near Bundy. And you know what's weird? Is that when you look at T. Lander's testimony, and you look at Harmon's testimony, and you look at Heitstra's testimony, and you look at Pilnack's testimony, and you look at Aronson's testimony, and you look at Mandel's testimony, all of these defense witnesses, and what you see, what you come away with is this. These people are all at Bundy at the same time, basically, if you believe them. They are all basically on Bundy, at the intersection, or within view of 875 South Bundy. They're all there in this small area, basically at the same time. But when you talk to them, and when they testify, they all tell you they didn't see any cars. They didn't see any people walking. They didn't see each other. Mutually exclusive. They mutually exclude each other. All of that testimony, they contradict themselves. They contradict themselves. And I'm not here to say these people are lying or whatever. They may just be mistaken. I don't know. But you have to evaluate their testimony, and I just think it's important that you take note of that. And I hope as well that you would take a look back at the timeline witnesses, if that's what we can call them, the ones that we called. Mark Storfer. He was concerned that the dog barking might wake his little boy, and so he told you what time it was. He looked directly at the clock, and he was interviewed the next day, the day after the murders. He knew what time it was when he heard the dog barking. Look back at Eva Stein. She lived in the condo directly above the walkway where the bodies were found. She lived right next door at 873 South Bundy. I believe her time was 10:20. Was it, Eva? Was it 10:20? It was 10:20. Those are the people you can rely on in terms of time. They're right there. They live there. They live right there near 875 South Bundy. But so you've heard the defense and you've heard the prosecution case, and as I said before, you're going to have to make the decision in this case, and whatever decision you make, we'll live with. But after I finish talking to you today, the defense is going to talk to you, and I don't know who's going to talk to you or who's going to talk to you first. I would ask that you listen, and listen as attentively as you have listened to me, apparently. But I'm going to ask you as well that you keep in mind that as you listen to them, consider this. Hope, at least, that they can somehow extrapolate from all the evidence we've heard in this case where the defendant was at the time of the murders. If he ain't the murderer, where was he? And maybe they can tell you that based on the evidence in this case. And they put on a defense and bear in mind and insist, I think, if they can, explain to you what happened to O.J. Simpson's Aris Light 70263 gloves. The gloves found at the murder scene, the same style of gloves purchased by Nicole, the same style of gloves you see him wearing in that January 6, 1992 game photo. Where are his gloves? They called 58 witnesses. They called the maid, Gigi Garain. They called Miss Arnell Simpson. If he never owned a pair of those gloves, I don't recall the defense asking him if he owned a pair of those gloves. I don't recall the defense asking the maid, the woman who kept the closet, who put things up, who did the laundry. I don't recall them asking her if he owned a pair of gloves like that, like the ones we found at Bundy, like the one we found behind his house. And I don't recall him asking the maid whether or not he owned a pair of Bruno Magli's. This is stuff you'd want to know. Insist that the defense explain to you who kills two people wearing $200 leisure shoes? If it ain't this man, if it isn't this defendant. Ask him to explain to you why the bloody shoe prints leading away from the bodies are size 12, his size. And where did all that blood come from? And why is it that when he spoke to Tom Lang, he told Tom Lang that the shoes he wore the night before were white Reeboks? They put on a defense, and you would expect that if the man that Alan Park saw entering the defendant's house that night was not the defendant, you would expect them to have called that man to tell you that, hey, it was me. It wasn't the defendant, right? And if O.J. Simpson didn't create or cause those stumps on the wall behind Cato Kalin's house, then who did? This is the defendant's property. And when Kalin comes out with that flashlight, and when he finally sees the defendant sure doesn't seem too concerned about those stumps on the wall. I mean, Cato's frightened enough to grab a flashlight. He's frightened enough to tell the woman he's talking to on the phone that, hey, if I'm not back in 10 minutes, call the police. Worry about me. Or words to that effect. But when he tells the defendant about these stumps on the wall, he isn't too concerned about it. He has West Tech security. We know that because the police talked to West Tech before they entered his house. Did Did the defendant call the police to say, hey, I may have a prowler on my property? Did he tell Cato to? Did he call West Tech, his private security, to come check this out? Did they? No. Why not? Because he knew. The defendant knew who caused the thumps on the wall. It was him. And why did he lie to Alan Park about being asleep? He wasn't asleep. And there are a variety of questions that you ought to insist be answered, that should be answered for you by the defense before you even consider acquitting this man of these very, very brutal crimes. The whole thing with the cut on his hand, what a fluke that is. You gonna fall for that? They talk about cover-ups, that's a cover-up. That is a cover-up. Ask him to explain to you how it is, if there were two killers, how the other one got out of that bloody crime scene without leaving any evidence of his presence. A major, major question in all of this is what happened to that little black bag? Remember the bag on the driveway, at the driveway? The one that Cato offered to go get that night just before the defendant left for the airport? The defendant said, I'll get it, I'll get it. What happened to that bag? Has it been seen since? The defense, well, we know that some of the luggage, apparently taken to Chicago by the defendant, was seized by retired Judge Delbert Wong. Remember? The Louis Vuitton bag? The one the defendant came back from Chicago with, the one he gave to Robert Kardashian. You saw it on tape. What happened to the little black bag? What happened to the contents of that Louis Vuitton bag? Remember? When you look at the tape, you see Kardashian standing there in front of the defendant's house, and you can tell that that bag is full. But when that bag comes to Delbert Wong, to Judge Wong, when it's pointed out to him, when it's seized by him months and months later, there's nothing in the bag. The bag is empty. What was in that bag? Ask him to explain to you why it is that if he didn't do it, why then is there a ton of evidence pointing to him and only to him? And ask him to explain to you, hey, if this is a rush to judgment, why then did the police go out to that house 8 times prior to 1989? Why didn't they ever arrest him? And if this is a rush to judgment, why did the police stand out in front of the house, in front of 875 South Bundy that night for a couple of hours doing nothing, as the defense has asserted, doing nothing but waiting for Van Adderen Lane? That's a rush to judgment. This is no rush to judgment. Unfortunately, this is just how things go. Those cops got out there to conduct a murder investigation, and that investigation led them to Rockingham. They followed the blood trail. Using your common sense, and when you evaluate all the evidence, you should do the same thing. Take a look at the crime scene and follow that blood trail. Because when you do, you're going to follow it right into his house, into his yard, into his bathroom, into his bedroom, right into his lap. And that blood trail went nowhere else. It didn't go anywhere else, and it didn't go to any other person. When I began this discussion with you last night, I talked to you about justice and what justice really means in this case. And it just means doing the right thing under the law. I mean, basically, that's all it means. Following his instructions. Just do what he tells you to do, the way he tells you to do it, and you'll be fine. I've spent hours talking to you, and I've talked to you about the explosion, about that fuse, how the fuse gets shorter. We've explained to you that he had the opportunity and the means and the motive to do it, and that he did it. And we discussed a little bit about the smoke. We talked about the smoke the defense has put up. You have to find your way through the smoke. One of the first things they're going to tell you is the prosecution's case lasted 6 months and ours lasted 2 months. They're going to tell you that. But you just keep in mind who was cross-examining those witnesses for days and days and days about minutia, There was a lot of minutia in this case, and you know it was, because you didn't write it down. The defense got lost in minutia in their attempt to confuse you and to raise a reasonable doubt. But let me explain justice to you this way, and then I'll sit down and I'll be quiet. The people put on their case, the defense put on their case, and I assert that the defense case is a bunch of smoke and mirrors. It's all about distracting you from the real evidence in this case. So imagine the smoke, and imagine a burning house. Okay? Imagine that you're standing in front of a burning house, and from inside that burning house you can hear the wail of a baby, a baby's cry, a baby in fear, a baby about to lose its life. And you can hear that baby screaming. You can hear that wail. Now that baby's justice. This is baby justice. Now usually justice is a strong woman, but in this case, justice is just a baby. And you hear that baby, and you hear that wail, and you see the smoke, you see the defense. There's all this smoke in front of you. And you feel a sense, you have a sense of justice. And you have a sense of what the law requires. And you have a strong commitment to justice and to the law, and you want to do the right thing. Well, justice is about to perish. Justice is about to be lost. Baby justice is about to be lost, and so you start to wade through that smoke, trying to get to that baby. You've got to save that baby. You have to save baby justice. And if you happen to run into some smoke, find your way through the smoke. And if you happen to run into a couple of defense attorneys along the way, just ask them to politely step aside and let you find your way through the smoke, because the smoke isn't over, okay? The smoke's about to get heavier because they're about to talk to you. Just use your common sense. Wade through the evidence, get down to the bottom line, and please, do the right thing. It has been an honor to appear before you, and we will wait for your verdict.
Thank you, Mr. Darden. All right, let me see counsel without the court report, please.